he was making me angry. He knew I was strong in the mind there. So even the fact that, even that was premeditated, the fact that he was leaving it, not for the benefit of him not having his practice darts, but what it was doing to me.
Hello, welcome along to the story of here at the MODUS Super Series, where we have a look back at the life and times of some of the stars of the sport. Today, we're going to be having a look back at the career of the former UK Open, World Match Play, and various other tournament winner, Dimitri Van den Bergh, a trailblazer in his country of Belgium, the first ever major winner from his homeland. We'll be delving into his career highlights and possibly what is to come as well over the course of his career. We're going to be doing that all in the company of Glenn Durrant. Glenn, Dimitri Van den Bergh is a player from a country which is, in terms of the sport, Belgium, growing all the time. And he's been perhaps we had Kim Huybrechts before, but the first player to make serious inroads in terms of winning big tournaments.
Yeah, I think they've all played their part. I went over to Belgium last year as part of a coaching academy, and let me tell you that he's like a god over there. I mean, it was like Mike Decker's place where he does a lot of practice in as well, and it really is. And the quality of the youth players demonstrated at the JDC finals recently as well. So, yeah, it's definitely a country on the rise, and there's plenty more coming through.
We'll talk about his career in a second, but I want to talk about his legacy and his impact to the point where there's a major tournament in Belgium called the Dimitri Van den Bergh Classic, which when you consider his age and you consider he's nowhere near done in terms of his career, already he's done a lot for darts in that part of the world.
Yeah, and you know, when you represent your country, you know, like he wore the colours for a long time. He admired Kim Huybrechts so much, and as you mentioned, for me, Kim was the first real player that, you know, barring players like Eric Claris who came through, but he then just took it to a new level, and I think he's then inspired Mike Decker to what he's doing now. But you know, he's a great player. Hopefully that comes across as well in this interview as well. There's more to Dimitri than what you see on the TV.
And he was somebody that came through very young. It probably, again, part of that first era of players that we really did see from like a tender age of like 12 or 13.
Yeah, I'm never great with dates, but I remember going over to the Belgium Open, and it was always a week later you had the Antwerp Open as well. Dimitri's from Antwerp, and I used to play pairs with a player from Yorkshire by the name of Martin Atkins, and we had a phenomenal record in the BDO. And it's almost like I was playing players, and then we reached the final, and up walks these two 13, 14-year-olds. Couldn't believe my luck. And by the names of Dimitri Van den Bergh and Mike Decker. So they came through the ranks together. You know, they did a little bit the BDO, but there was a pathway then. They were then able to then, you know, play the youth. They were then able to play the development tours, and then that transition into seniors. So I met him very early.
And also, when you look at that part of the world, he played the Dutch Open as well when he was a youth player. Actually, in that Benelux region at that moment in time, obviously you had the PDC Pro Tour, but outside of that circuit, there was a lot of systems in place for young players to come through.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, his dad was a fantastic player. Again, I remember playing him in the Lakeside qualifiers. I think his name was Chris Van den Bergh. Maybe someone will correct me on that. So I think his dad played a big part in the you know what we see of him now. And like I say, he wasn't the most talented player in the world, Dimitri Van den Bergh, but let me tell you, he worked incredibly hard on that Rolls-Royce throw that he has now. His dad played a big part in that.
So let's move on then from what was a promising youth player in Dimitri to somebody then who had become a bit more established, who would then begin to make his name. And in terms of PDC darts, initially, actually, he was doing all the building blocks, right, wasn't he?
Yeah, like I said, everything was done behind the scenes. It was a family thing. I mean, he could get to the back end of tournaments. I mean, he got management very early, and the management company I was with, Mac Elkin, so Mac invested in him very, very early. So there was always a structure in place. They knew where to go in, but it doesn't always work out like that. We've seen so many young players come through. I mean, it was only yesterday we were talking about Jamie Lewis, and at the impact he had. It doesn't always happen then to go on to seniors, but with Dimitri, it was step by step. We've almost seen him playing like meditation style. It's irritated crowds, it's irritated players, but he does everything to squeeze the best out of him. So there was a program for Dimitri van den Bergh. They knew where they wanted to go, and boy, did he deliver. And
then he make his debut at the World Championship. And he'd make an instant impact on his World Championship debut as well. You had the dancing, you had the show. But that was the first time we really saw the dream maker side of Dimitri.
Exactly. That was my answer going to be there. That was the time then, that built the blocks. And that's when the name, the dream maker, come in. And people smiled, people sniggered. I remember going to Chorley for an exhibition for John Gwynn, and part of that Dimitri was there. And I played him, and I didn't think that great deal of him. I give him a good beating. I won comfortably, and never did I once think that he'll come back one day and get that back on me. So his progression was nice and structured.
So in terms of, you've played Dimitri a lot of times, in terms of when you play him, what would you say his key attributes are as a player?
Well, first of all, can I talk about him as a person? He's one of the kindest people that it doesn't always come across. So if people are watching it now, you'll think of Dimitri, doing all this and everything like that. He worked with sports psychologists before people knew what that was all about in darts. He tried to squeeze everything he could because he's not as talented as Mighty Decker. He's probably not as talented as Kim Hybrits, but he worked 8 hours a day to look at what attributes you needed to be an elite player. So that's first and foremost. He is the kindest person you'll ever want to meet. But when he gets on the hockey, he's fierce. That determination to play, and he's a wonderful match player. Obviously, my first final for the PDC was against Dimitri. That was a great honour to sort of do that, because if you see the respect he gave me at the end, so now we're friends for life, because that's what it is with Dimitri. If you cross him, there's no second chances. So he keeps his friends and his circle of friends very, very close. But this fierce determination, even when people began to write him. But in answer to your question, you need this. I always quote in commentary that there's elements of people that you can't really teach. It comes from within. But with Dimitri, it's not always natural. He's worked at the game. He's worked at his breathing. He's worked at his timing. And who's to doubt him? He's a major champion.
And so is it about squeezing that lemon then for what it's worth?
Absolutely. But he'll tell you that as well. It's not like he can just pick up the dart and hit a 180 like a lot of the players can do. He has dragged every ounce out of him to become a champion. And he was a wonderful development to a player. Huge success as a world champion youth player. So it was all that building blocks. But everything that he did, he never once thought, that's it. He was always looking at the next version.
How would you describe his transition from youth player to senior player?
Surprising, because it's not easy, but he did it pretty seamless. And like I said, that incredible belief that he has is something that you need. He never, ever, he wanted to be a world match play champion. He wanted to be a UK Open champion. People, like I say, including me, may have sniggered at that because I didn't think he had that within. But put him on a stage, he's just a different player.
And then we see him then begin to then make those steady, incremental moves. We'll talk about the match play win in a bit. But prior to that, he was making slow progress without then really bursting at the seams. Would that be fair to say?
I think the reason it's slow progress, he's never been the greatest on the floor. He's a showman. He loves the fact that when he's on a stage, he loves a crowd. So maybe that progress seems slow, but I think in the bigger picture, that was because he's yet to really get on the stage where he flourished.
And just describe that environment, because the floor is completely different to the stage, where Dimitri can be himself. He can not show off, because that's not his way, but he can be a bit more extravagant. He can dance. He can have a bit of fun with the crowd. Where when it comes to those floor events, it very much is a sanitized environment to the point where you can't celebrate, or if you're going to do something, it has to be silent. There's a complete contrast, isn't there, between environments, and maybe one suits Dimitri better than the other.
I think it's two separate games. There's times when I've been on the floor when the treble 20s opened up. I could have been throwing the dart underarm. And I think that transition onto the stage, I never felt the same on a stage. I had success, but for Dimitri, that walk-on is all part of his pre-throw routine. But he needs to dance, he needs to get that adrenaline going, he needs that buzz. And when he gets on that stage, he like I say, he's fierce. He's so difficult and such a tough opponent.
And we see it for other sports people like Rafa Nadal in tennis, for example, that before he serves, he has to do his certain routine, flick the hair and the bandana, and has to bounce the ball so many times and what have you. And Dimitri is very much the same. It's all very rhythmic, isn't it?
I think that's part of the work he's done with the psychologist. You know, he'll take his time until his breathing is exactly where he wants it to be. He won't throw a dart, he won't be rushed. But he's tried everything. If you see some of his games, he's played as quick as Ricky Evans sometimes. So at times he's had the crowd and the players, Luke Humphries at UK Open, he's had the, pulling your hair out against him. I think that's all part of that one-to-one match play.
Talk more about that and the match play in a second, on the second part of this story of here at the MODUS Super Series on Pluto TV. Welcome back to the second part of the story of here at the MODUS Super Series. I'm having a look back at the career of Dimitri van den Bergh, the Dreammaker, two-time major champion. And his first major success, well, I think it's fair to say it came out of the blue. It was the 2020 World Match Play. It was behind closed doors. It was in Milton Keynes. He wasn't one of the favourites. It was the first time he played in that tournament. Yes, he was showing good signs, but realistically, did anybody think that before the week he was going to win it?
Yeah, I see. It's going back to that period of COVID, which was different. You know, we talked about the floor and talked about the stage where it was a mixture, really, because there was no crowd there. And that match play, it was a strange time. It was a really strange... And we did see some unusual results. And one player who benefited from that was Dimitri van den Bergh when he beat Gary Anderson in the final.
But is that ironic when you've got a player that likes to play up to the crowd, that likes to do this, that, the other? The first big success comes in a tournament behind closed doors.
There was that fake noise, do you remember? So I think all part of the process for Dimitri's mind was the fact that there was a crowd there. I played him in the semi-finals. It was 17-15. And he was absolutely infuriating me because he was, you go off for a break, then you come back on, he was leaving it to the last second. Even so, he wasn't even allowed his 3 practice darts. But what it was doing, what I didn't realise at the time was, he was making me angry. He knew I was strong in the mind there. So even the fact that, even that was premeditated, the fact that he was leaving it, not for the benefit of him not having his practice darts, but what it was doing to me. I didn't think he'd then go on and beat Gary Anderson in the final, but when the Dreammaker has that dream, he knew that realisation there, and deep down, I was delighted for him.
So was it about small wins then in the case of Dimitri, knowing, right, this is what can give me an advantage, this is what can give me a head start, and this is how I can plot a path?
I think so. He's not going to give me the answers. One day maybe when he's sat commentating, he might sort of give out what answers that he had. I don't know what he's doing with his one-to-ones, with his family, his psychologist, but it's played a huge part. And maybe, we've talked about Stephen Bunting recently, saying a lot of his success is the fact he's working with sports psychologists. Dimitri was almost like in a meditation state. When he's up there, he was difficult to read, and only Dimitri can answer that.
Then the final against Gary Anderson. As you mentioned, at that time, Gary Anderson was playing superbly, excellently, came off the back of COVID very, very well. And again, there was that story of, look, you got the experience of Gary Anderson, who'd won the tournament 2 years, but was actually defending the prize money from 2018 at that particular point, against somebody who's on his debut, but is seemingly flourishing on his debut.
I thought there was only going to be one winner in Gary Anderson, because I think our game went on for just shy of 3 hours. So, and then you've got to get yourself ready. And if I remember rightly, Gary Anderson come through his semi-final quite comfortably. So for me, there's only going to be one answer. But when you've got a dream, when you've got unbelievable belief, then anything can happen up there. And Dimitri van den Bergh, delivered what he always promised.
Is that the reason why maybe when it comes to longer tournaments like the match play, the World Championship, we see Dimitri play his best up because he can chip away at opponents?
Yeah, and you would think the amount of energy he's using with his mindset, that incredible concentration, you would think the longer it went on, it wouldn't benefit him. So it shows you how strong he is mentally. And like you said, in the end, all that hard work he put into it, that time there, I used to stand in the practice area looking at the throw. I mean, it's how I envisage a dart should be thrown. You know, you've heard me talk so much about the stance, the balance, the throw, the elbow. He worked on that so well, and in the end, it was just a well-oiled machine.
And the reception that gets, because it's the first time a Belgian player's ever won a major tournament, that kind of broke the floodgates, didn't it, for that particular nation?
Oh, he can't walk down the street in Belgium. But just on the flip side there, I think that's when he first experienced the booze in the UK, and that was a shock to him as well, because dancing Dimitri, he thought everybody was going to love him, and for the first time, he was beginning that reception there. But once again, he dealt with it.
How hard is that to deal with?
I think for Dimmy, it was hard. I think it was a little bit like Luke Humphries right now. It's almost like when he's called out, it's a little bit like, is there really people booing? Because I'm a nice person and I'm just wanted to do that. But when Dimitri's standing back and not throwing a dart for 20 seconds, you're going to, you know, the players can get frustrated, and clearly the crowd did as well. But listen, he went on to Premier League. He went on to being a further major champion. Then
the next year, you get to the final of the match play. Almost won it again, but in that final, nobody was stopping Peter Wright.
He was so proud of that. I think that was a real big moment for Dimitri, because the pressure was on. He wasn't defending that match player win, but to bounce back. But Peter Wright that year, that's why I made the statement, Peter, please don't ever change that darts that you've got there, because he was unbeatable that week. Dimitri was superb.
And then after that, we saw tournaments where he was doing okay, but maybe not kicking on. Then there was that infamous World Cup with Kim Huybrechts, where seemingly there just wasn't a synergy as a team.
Well, just before that, I remember playing him at the World Series of Darts when I met his partner for the first time, and then became a dad. So this Dimitri, from a 13-year-old I met as a dart player, is now playing darts, not only representing himself and his management, but also as a family man and a father. So that maturity side then kicked in. And as you mentioned, the next phase of it was that infamous World Cup where him and Kim Huybrechts didn't want to speak with each other. And after the first round, I think it took both of the managers to get together and say, look, you've got a great chance of winning this, but it felt a little bit forced. But what it meant was, it was box office. You couldn't take your eyes off them.
How difficult must it be to be playing pairs with somebody that you don't particularly get on with?
Look, someone might say, Glenn, what are you talking about? Because it wasn't my era when I was on the circuit, but I believe Eric Bristow and John Law, who I think are the best pairing ever to play darts, they didn't get on. So you don't have to be best mates, because one thing in pairs, you'll see the fist pumping. You'll see them they're hugging when they hit a 180. It was just a little bit different, and I think it was a bit of a yin and yang, and it certainly worked for them.
Then let's move on a few years to his next success, the UK Open, which we've seen kind of a story of that tournament where players can just plot their way through the field. That was what Dimitri did, and then he played Luke Humphries in the final. We mentioned it a little bit earlier on, that the crowd maybe weren't too happy with how long it took Dimitri to throw the darts, because he was going through the processes. But again, symptomatic to his career, he was able to hold it together at a crunch moment in a crunch game.
Now, that one did surprise me, winning the UK Open, because his floor game at this point was not where he wanted it to be. He was almost crashing down the rankings, but he's had this quality of just being able to pull out a real big tournament, and that UK Open was it. And the final, yeah, absolutely right. When I think of the UK Open, I think of the fact that Luke Humphries' face, and he was baffled, he was confused, and Dimitri was just in a world where it's hard to explain to you and to people watching right now. But when you find it as a dart player, where you don't even know that the crowd's booing, even afterwards, you probably not the realisation that he was probably upsetting the crowd and Luke Humphries in that game. He was just somewhere that only Dimitri knows, and it was a wonderful win for him.
You were stablemates with Dimitri for a long time. What was he like as a stablemate?
Wonderful. Honestly, I think he's in the top 5 I've ever met in darts. And if you're a friend, he'll be your best friend. Only 3 weeks ago, and my short-term memory is so bad now, he once won a match, and me and my wife were, we sent him a video. So literally 10 minutes after he won that game, so it'll be the Masters, wasn't it? So when he won the game, he replied. He come back with a video saying that we're good friends. I love Dimitri to bits, and you know, when I see the stick he gets, I know the real person behind there, and he'll do absolutely anything for you.
What next for Dimitri? Where can he still go?
I think it's important work-life balance. Like I say, I think he's a father, and I think first and foremost, that's the most important thing. Number two, he's a proven winner. You know, he's only happy when he's winning titles, and he's due to win another one because now I think he's just slipped out the top 16. I think he's gone to 17 now. We know what the rewards are now of being a top 16 player. He'll be doing lots of work behind the scenes that you probably no one realises there. He doesn't want to go downhill, but that circuit, when you do start dropping down rankings a little bit, it's tough. He might have to pull out another big major there, but Dimitri will often always surprise people, and I'm sure in 2025 he'll do that again.
Glenn, thank you. Thank you for watching the latest edition of the Story of here at the MODUS Super Series. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, to download the Pluto TV app to your smartphone, your smart TV, or your smart device. You can watch the MODUS Super Series 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 35 hours of live action on top of all of this bonus content. We'll see you again soon.